Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Just like the sunrise, we gonna let it
Ember.
Oh, Ember.
Miss Ember.
Oh, great, Ember. Tell me what I'm doing.
Appreciate you, Ember.
Love Ember. She's great.
Bottom of the barrel Ember bullshit.
Oh my God, Ember.
Ember.
We love you, Amber.
You rock at that, Ember.
Ember is the queen.
We're neighbors, Ember.
I see you, Ember.
Hey, Ember is hot.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. If you're watching in real time, if you're watching in the future, of course, who knows when that might be. But thank you for joining either way. And if you're new here or watching in the future, do take a second to hit the subscribe button. It helps. Plus, you can join us for the live streams in the future and be part of this wonderful live chat over here underneath Lil. Let me see if I can shape that a bit. Nope, that just made it fatter. Can I make it? Nope. That just made it cover more. You know what? That's fine. We'll just leave it right there. It's all good. Live broadcasting, folks, but that's the adventure, isn't it? Today is a bit of a big day for both Lil and I. In fact, we're both starting on new shows, so to speak. Mine is fairly simple. I'm going to be helping Jovan Bradley. I'll be call screening for his show later tonight, which could be fun and exciting. I don't know yet because I've never actually been in that phase of production. And Lil, you have an adventure today too.
Oh, yes, I do. I am now co-hosting Politicality with Joe, the Kentucky Atheist, which will be on 30 minutes after this show on the Kentucky Atheist channel. And I'll also be, afterwards, I'll be uploading it to my channel in case you want to watch it later. And I am super nervous. I don't know why, but I am. Well, I do know why. My boss is probably going to be
know why, yeah. So yeah, this show should auto redirect you over to the Kentucky Atheist, but I understand there's been some problems with the redirect working properly. So I've also pinned the link at the top of the live chat. So if you are watching live and you want to continue over to TKA and see what all the fun political stuff that's been going on, and holy shit, what a day for it.
Yeah.
The link is in the live chat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's been, I'm used to crazy news cycles. This one is exceptionally crazy. Like,
I've been hearing a lot of analysts everywhere across the spectrum refer to yesterday as the worst day for America's relationship with its own government in their lifetimes. We're not talking 9/11. That was an external attack. People's relationship with their own government has never been in a worse situation in living memory.
I had somebody who used to be a all-in red hat, is still conservative, but left the red hats alone a while back. Basically coming to me and say, I have no idea why I ever liked this guy. What the hell is he doing? And he was referring to what happened in Minneapolis. I'm like, I told you for 10 years. I told you. He's like, yes, you did. And I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm like, finally, somebody admits that I've been saying this for 10 years.
Right? Oh my goodness. So as y'all know, I'm a big fun. I'm fun too, but I'm a big fan of Luxander. And it was doing its normal Wednesday live stream yesterday. And the issue came up, of course, and somebody in the chat was like, well, if you just read Project 2025, you'd see this coming. And Lux was just like, as if I wasn't telling you to read it years ago.
I read it almost as soon as it came out in the first like handful of like, oh my God, you guys need to look at this. And it was just like, oh, holy shit, this is bad. We tried.
It's a big fucking oof. It's a big fucking oof. So if you're joining us for the first time, I often open the show with some notes about what's been happening in real time, partly to give the regular viewers some consistency as we have like this ongoing story arc of events happening in real life. Also to somewhat document for the future what was going on a given day, if anybody looks back in the future, but also because this is still a morning show. I do try to address, I try to focus on the main topic, but I try to do notes and stuff at the beginning because I'm very prone to tangents. And if we can get some things out of the way up front, it's easier to, it really is. It's easier to stay focused on the main topic. So that's why we do that. Get a little, I try to have it be like conversation, but it's often not because the world we live in, such is the nature of reality, I guess. Who designed this reality? This was an awful fucking
I don't know, but I will say at the end of Politicality, there is a story that made me smile.
Oh, hey, good news for the end.
I didn't realize
that the shows were that organized.
Well, that's one thing that I'm kind of insisting on because, of course, everything going down is terrible. And I'm like, we need to put something in there that's either good news or at least a positive for our quote unquote side. We need to have something to give people a reason to smile and a reason to hope. So we need to shove that out there if we can.
Humans have a really hard time with hope. It's almost so okay. To transition into today's topic a little bit. One of the reasons, one of the things that makes me pick the topics for today's shows is there's stuff that I'm interested in, but I don't really fully know. Like a lot of people say I know a lot of stuff, and maybe I do, but there's a lot of things I don't know, and I want to learn more about them. the things that I know better than others, I can often present and explain in a more complete way than a person could pick up from, like, say, reading the encyclopedia. But things that I don't know, we can learn together, and we can use my understanding of other topics to weave it in with the knowledge we've already built up and acquired to create an even more in-depth understanding of things. That's the idea behind the show. But sometimes I come across a topic that is something that I'm not familiar with at all, but is germane for various other reasons. For example, tomorrow we're scheduled. It may get postponed because I had a special guest in mind for it, and I still don't know if she can make it. So we may end up postponing tomorrow's show, but it's about dissociative identity disorder, which has been coming up a lot in pop culture. And today's show sets the foundation. It puts pieces in place that we're going to need when we do that DID show, whether it's tomorrow or sometime in the future. So that's what we're up to. But a lot of people reference the stuff we're going to talk about today. They talk about it, but they don't really get it. I'm not sure how much there is to get, and we'll dig into that a bit as we go on. But also, so much of it is framed around the negative exclusively. It's almost like humans are preoccupied with badness, and there's like no room for hope. And I know it can't be biological, because children are hopeful. A lot of fully functional adults, well-adjusted people, are hopeful. It's just, I guess it's because the negative is what harms us. So, like, for example, I saw Dr. Ben in the chat, really good friend of the community. I could praise him for days, but he makes me think of doctors. People go to the doctor when something's wrong, not when something's right. No one goes to the doctor's office because their arm especially doesn't hurt today, you know? So all of our medical and related literature tends to focus around treating badness, because that's what people want help with. It doesn't focus on goodness, because that isn't really considered a problem that needs addressing. And that makes sense, but it also puts more of our intellectual attention into the negative side of things and very little left over for the positive side of things. And perhaps that shapes something of the way our culture views everything. Perhaps. I suppose it's sort of a similar thing with the news, come to think of it. You know, I've been a journalist off and on in different roles for over 20 years now. And you can't help but notice there's an extreme emphasis on the negative. And a lot of people just assume that's because that's what sells newspapers. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's because of the compelling nature of a call to action. Here's what's happening and here's what you can do about it. It makes people feel engaged and involved and like a real fucking person instead of a passive observer. There are very few good news stories that have that interactive ability to them. Like, for example, what happened in Minneapolis. People are having vigils. People are having protests. People are doing something. If the situation were different and it was a police officer walking stray dogs or something, like, what is there to do, you know?
Yeah.
So it may be the same sort of thing. The focus is on the negative because that's what needs treatment.
Yeah, it's one of those things that from what, and I've even noticed myself doing this, is like if I'm reading something that's like a good news story, I'm like, oh, that's cool. But it doesn't like stick in my brain the way a bad news story does, because like I've been railing about the Venezuela thing for days now. I've seen a ton of good news stories, but there's like maybe 2 that I could reference that I can remember that I've seen. I know I've seen more than that, but it's just like the bad news, especially right now, tends to be so catastrophic too, that I think that also just tends to stick in people's heads more. And also it's just wall-to-wall coverage. The good news stuff just doesn't get covered as much, and it doesn't stick in our heads as much. It's almost, I think it's kind of like the opposite of stuff that happens with like psychics and stuff, where people forget all the misses, but they remember the handful of hits they get simply because they're good at observing people. It's kind of like the opposite of
Texas
that.
sharpshooter fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. So that's another pet peeve of mine is people. There are fallacies as in mistakes in reasoning, and there are fallacies as in things that aren't true, but often get it's weird. It's only a Texas sharpshooter fallacy when you use it in an argument, not just a thing that happens. But I digress. I just don't want the philibros coming for me and being like, it's a fallacy because it's not a fallacy if it isn't a fallacy in an argumentative sense. But also, that's a fallacy, which is another photo. See, this is why
This is why I
nobody
don't
likes
do
the
philosophy.
philobros, because they're so full of shit, It's not a fallacy for the same reason a fallacy is a thing, because if you're not using it in an argument, then it's not a logical fallacy. It's just a mistake in reasoning, I
This is why I don't do
digress.
philosophy. Yeah, I can't do philosophy, and this is why.
That's not actual philosophy. That's pretend
No, I know.
philosophy. That's people who want to think they're philosophers but don't like to actually think.
Yeah.
It's in fact, we have a similar thing in physics, right? Like there are people who understand that the models we design are models, and this is going to come up in our topic for today. All these different models of how consciousness works. They're models. They're mechanisms to aid our understanding, not necessarily intended to be a description of what physically exists. And there are physicists who get so carried away in the math, the form of the models, the presentation and the argumentation, that they forget they're supposed to be a description of reality. And so they just wander off into numbers and variables and shit and create something wonderfully elegant and brilliant that bears no resemblance to our real universe. But they still call themselves physicists. It's exactly the same as with philosophy. There's people who get so carried away with the argument techniques and the rhetorics and the lists of fallacies that they forget we're supposed to be talking about thoughts and knowledge and understanding and what makes things real and what truth is and, ontology stuff, Two different kinds of philosophy, just like there's two different kinds of physics, for instance. And we do see that in we see it in psychology a lot, sadly. And a lot of people have a problem with psychology. Today, obviously, our main subject is psychological in nature. How is the mind divided? Mind, psychology, right? Not the same as neurology. It's had a bad reputation for a long time because there's a huge tendency towards pseudoscience. But even when it isn't pseudoscientific, it's still a soft science because it's so reliant on self-reports and stuff that can't be externally objectively verified. And so much of what we learn, we're left with doing statistical models. How does this trend appear to manifest across swaths of the population, which is handy for understanding models, but doesn't help you a whole lot with individuals because, once again, statistics do not apply to individuals. So what do we do? We can come up with models of 80% of people react a certain way under a certain circumstance. Great, cool. We can form a model for how to treat those people, but what about the other 20%? Just because 80% is a lot doesn't mean everyone fits in that mold. That's like saying 80% of people are right-handed, so let's make only right-handed scissors. What about the 20% who are left-handed,
Yeah, that's the thing. And especially like with psychology, it's one of those things because one of my sons has some mental health issues, but they're atypical for what you would normally expect. So it took us forever to figure out what was going on with him. And it's just, and his psychologist is like, this is the first time I've ever seen it present like this. And so, yeah, it's a difficult science sometimes. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's a soft science, so it's just like it's not, and it's still relatively new too. So
Compared to many of the others,
Mm-hmm.
physics, we've been developing the scientific method along the way. So some of the
Mm-hmm.
oldest physics is not exactly what we'd call scientific by today's standards, but we've
Mm-hmm.
been trying to figure out what makes reality go for over 2,000 years. I mean, arguably as long as there have been humans, but it's been a formalized field of study for over 2,000 years. Whereas psychology,
Mm-hmm.
people have been trying to get a grip for how the mind works and behavior and stuff for just as long, but we've only started to really coalesce it into a formal science in the last couple hundred years. So
We only
we're as
recently
far
stopped
along
blaming
in
it on
psychology as
demons.
Aristotle was in physics, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we only recently stopped blaming it on demons, and some people still do that.
It's true. It's true.
It's just like it's one of those things that it amazes me on how some sciences, like with physics and geology, like we know so much about the world, and it's like something like with the Big Bang and stuff, and people are like, how can you possibly know that? We have very good scientific reasons for why we think that's what happened. But then
we did a whole show on that too.
Yeah, and it comes down to something like psychology, and it's like, yeah, demons. It's like,
you've got ghosts in your blood.
Yeah,
you should do cocaine about it.
It's so weird seeing two things that are like kind of scientific in nature or medical in nature, for that matter, just being on two totally different levels of understanding as far as like humanity is understanding.
Winnie's one of my new best friends from Jovanland.
Ah, hello.
I don't know. I'm weirdly excited for today because, like, again, I've never done call screening, that part of production, but like, I don't know. It's exciting to try new things, I guess. So it should
I even
be...
got me a big ass coffee for today, just so I'm like ready to go.
That's always the biggest coffee.
I don't drink coffee all that often though. I usually do Java and jugs and maybe one other day a week, and that's it.
I mean, that's fair. It is, of course, much more important to stay hydrated. Hey folks, I've been working hard on my health, and so far I've lost over 140 pounds. A huge part of good health is hydration. That's why I'm thrilled to partner with Epic Water Filters. Check this out. Not only can you say goodbye to expensive bottled water, but these filters are made in the US, so no tariffs, and they're made to fit your life. From these lovely pitchers I can fill from, to sink units, to portable filters that fit in your reusable bottle. With Epic, I can refill from nature's water sources and not have to worry about bacteria and whatnot. But also, send back a used filter to be responsibly recycled, and they'll send you a free replacement, saving you and the earth even more. Want to save a ton of money, be healthier, and build a better world? Head to epicwaterfilters.com and enter code EMBER15 at checkout for 15% off. Don't settle for random water. Upgrade to Epic. I wasn't sure how I was going to get that ad in there today.
I was kind of I was kind of hoping you'd take the coffee line, and you did. So
So Misinterpretation says, I had an anthropology professor who also had a medical degree who said the brain is hard to understand and study because there's a bunch of chemicals sloshing around in there. That's fair. In fact, that's a big part of what psychiatrists do, is try to understand the interaction between the chemicals and the behavior. That's why you have to be both a doctor and have an underlying psychology understanding to be a psychiatrist. But they tend to, when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So when your focus is on adjusting neurochemicals, every problem seems to be subject to neurochemicals, when that isn't necessarily the case. So it gets interesting. But yeah, in any case, we can use that to jump in to today's topic, the actual material. So, divided mind. We understand the mind in many different ways, and we usually do that by dividing it up into understandable bits. Now, the first division that we came to understand, the thing that made Freud's career get started, was actually the conscious and unconscious mind. That's the thing that everybody intuitively understands. It doesn't take much explanation to get the gist of the consciousness and unconsciousness, because we know our brains continue to work while we're not conscious, such as when we're sleeping. And so it's really intuitive to say that dreams are generated by the unconsciousness and so on and so forth. And so Freud started to build off of that. But he discovered in the process there are different ways to understand how the conscious mind is doing its thing and interacting with the unconsciousness. And so he came up with this ideation that most people are broadly familiar with: the id, the ego, and the superego. Now, he wasn't proposing that there are three physically distinct portions of the mind, because the mind isn't a physical thing. It's an emergent thing produced by the brain. So these things don't exist anywhere in the brain. This is just a model for understanding how the mind goes about what it's doing. But there has to be that conscious acknowledgement that it is a model for understanding, not a model intended to describe what's physically happening. We're going to run into problems with that in more stuff that we're going to get to later in the show, because there's other variations that kind of forget about that very important distinction. So we'll see. Anyway, most people are broadly familiar with this, so we can go through this fairly quickly. So the id, ego, and superego are components of Freud's psychoanalytic theory. The id represents our basic instincts and desires, seeking immediate gratification, taking care of your needs. I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, etc. The ego balances the id's impulses with societal norms. It's the decision maker, I suppose. The I'm hungry, not now. It's the wrong time, or we just ate, or whatever the case may be. The ego balances those things in theory. And the superego is what you might consider the moral conscience, the ethical standards, as the article puts it, or the mores and customs. It's the part of the brain that understands what good behavior is and what's expected of you, and also understands at the level of intuition that if you violate those cultural expectations, you could suffer insofar as you'll be excluded from the group. You could be exiled or banished from society, or sent to prison, which is effectively internal banishment, So the ego's job is to balance the raw desires with the societal expectations. And in some ways, this is in fact a model for how consciousness arises in the first place. Now, again, this is an extremely old, outdated model that most people don't use. It just serves as a basis for understanding where all the rest of our understandings started from. But it does serve as a model for understanding how consciousness arose in the first place, because we do have the lizard brain desires like every other animal does. Some of them act on them pure instinct, and others don't. And the ones who don't seem to also have that social side, like packs of wolves, for example. They will attack each other under specific circumstances that are guided by something resembling cultural norms. It's different from pack to pack, So there's rules for behavior within a group, and therefore we see there is a evolutionary need for the ego to mediate between the desires and the societal expectations in order to ensure survival and eventual reproduction. There's an evolutionary selection for development of the ego. Now, that implies that critters like wolves and shit have egos. That isn't the same as consciousness in the way humans think of it. But again, we have to be clear that what humans do is not the pinnacle of all creation. We're not the greatest consciousness ever, and we're not as far as it's going to go. we're doing something different than the rest of the animals are, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily superior. It's superior for certain outcomes, the outcomes that we prefer, but that doesn't mean it is superior. And also, we're not all the way to where we're going. We never will be. That's evolution. There is no perfection we're striving to attain. We just keep iterating with each successive generation, hopefully getting more utility out of the things that are, you know? So it's not that wolves are, 50% of the way to human intercognition, let's say, for lack of a better term. I mean, I could just call it the ego, but I want to try to really extrapolate what I'm trying to say here. And calling it the ego makes people think certain things that don't really apply. It's a different amounts, different values, different functions by species. As we get deeper and deeper into cross-species psychology, we may come to understand that the ego itself may be differentiating along species lines. It's evolving just like everything else. So what we consider to be an ego could function entirely differently in wolves or any other creature for that matter. We don't know yet because the science is still new. But we need to start here because this is the basis for the idea of dividing up the mind into different components to understand behavior, why we do what we do, why we feel what we feel. It doesn't mean your mind is divided. It's just a model for understanding how the mind is functioning and why it does what it does. Okay, so continuing on a little bit. This just breaks down more of the details. The id is an instinct-driven, pleasure-seeking part of the mind. Not necessarily pleasure-seeking. This is another issue we run into in psychology, is people will project their values onto an idea and then not demonstrate it. They'll just staple it on and never see that that's something they added on, and they'll pass it on to others as if it's fact, right? Like the id isn't just pleasure seeking. It does that, but it also tries to avoid harm. That the fear is an id thing, right? It's instinct to run away from fire, run away from the snakes, or try to fight a grizzly bear, whatever the hell it is. That's id. That's unthinking reaction from pure emotion. That's what those emotions are for, The ego being the rational mediator. We really should say superego first and then ego, because it'll make more sense. So the superego, the moral conscience representing societal and parental standards. The parental, of course, is an insertion by Freud. It's his model. He can do that. But also, he was very preoccupied with parents. I get why. Because we're still having that nature versus nurture debate at the time. And Freud was very strongly on, not exclusively, but he favored the nurture side, your parents' impact. So everything you think and feel is determined by your parents. We know that's not true, but there's definitely an influence. But that's a whole other topic. Anyway, striving for ideal behavior. And this is where we get the concept of people becoming robots, like total ego suppression. And so people just carry out what's expected of them. The ego, it's called the rational mediator that balances the id's impulses with real world constraints. They aren't necessarily real world constraints, they're societal constraints, but that's another sticking point. But that's not all it does. From a certain point of view, you've got your lizard brain screaming for food or sleep or sex or whatever, and you've got your inner protocols and customs for how to behave in society and not be punished for it. And you've got the ego effectively isn't just mediating between the two, but it's also creating a sense of self, because neither one of those is the self, right? The id stuff is all, I need this, I want this, I must, there's no feedback. It's just pure desire. Whereas the superego has nothing to do with self. It's all about what you must do for others. So the only place for self to be is in the ego. And that's why people get confused about what the fuck ego means. They think an egotistical person is self-centered. That's not really its role, but that's the only place for self to be. What's important to you? What are your goals? Why are those your goals? You know, things like this. So it's complicated, but this is just our starting point. It gets more interesting. There's a whole bunch of different. What's that?
I said, yeah, but it makes sense though, the way you explained it. So
I try. My psychology courses were a long time ago, and this sort of stuff has never been my specialty.
hey, it made sense to me, and I have not taken psychology, so
well, hooray. There have been some developments since. We're going to pop around a bit because there's a lot. So the next thing I wanted to bring up is the original topic I was searching for was the origin and history of consciousness. And there's an actual book with that title, but that isn't what the book is actually about. It is interesting though. It's a 1949 book by analytical psychologist Eric Newman, or Neumann, depending on how you pronounce things. Me being from the United States, however I pronounce them is probably wrong, but you know, the author outlines the archetypical stages of development of consciousness. So what we're talking about here is Jung created, well, he took the idea of archetypes from Chaucer and applied it to the mind. And he came up with some really cool, well, you know what? This is where we should switch over to Jung. We should explain Jung. So first, two things about Jung. The first is that he brought in this idea of the collective unconscious, which some people have taken in a kind of woo-woo way, that there's a zeitgeist that isn't just memes spreading across culture, but there's some kind of magical, telepathic, collective unconsciousness, that there's a single hive mind that all our minds are tapped into by quantum processes or something.
Yes.
Who the fuck does? It's woo-woo.
Yeah.
What Jung was actually getting at is what we now call the zeitgeist. This idea that we all share certain understandings, interpretations, and ideas at a subconscious level. It's not the same as Freud's subconscious. We can see most memes. That's the whole point of memes, is you can see the meme and understand it without thinking about it. It isn't a conscious process. It is a subconscious process. It's an automatic conveyance of an idea. So that was Jung's first thing. The second thing, archetypes. So let's get into that. Jung identified various archetypes in human psychology. Now, again, models. We're trying to use models as a mechanism for understanding what people do in real life. We're specifically not saying this is what literally happens. It's just models. So you've identified various archetypes in human psychology. These include events such as birth and death and marriage, figures such as the mother and the father and the child. These things make sense. Everyone just kind of gets it, that in psychology, in behavior science, there's going to be the mother and the father and the child, because that's a human's very first experience, usually, is you're going to have one or more parents and yourself being a child. And then later in life, you may be the mother or the father and have a child, or you may have a relationship along those lines with another person where either you're the child to their big brother, big sister, or you're the big brother or big sister. And somebody, so it kind of defines our first conception of human relationships. So we also get motifs such as the apocalypse and the deluge. Now, people don't understand. the archetypes aren't always humans. Now, what do we mean by apocalypse? In this case, normally it brings up a fucking reference. There we go. It's the literary genre originating in Judaism in centuries following the Babylonian exile, but persisting in Christianity and Islam, especially in Christianity. In Apocalypse, a supernatural being reveals cosmic mysteries or the past to a human intermediary. Now, that's an important distinction, because when we say apocalypse in this context, we're not talking about the archetype of catastrophe and the end of the world. We're talking about divine revelation. Right? If you're into the old texts in the Apocrypha, even in a superficial way, you've probably heard of stuff like the Apocalypse of John. It often involves the revealing of secrets and hidden information. So in this case, what we mean is apocalypses are representative of epiphanies, those moments of profound discovery, as if God had reached down and whispered something in your ear, for example. And the deluge, which also biblical holy scripture stuff, that's about catastrophe. But this catastrophic language, I mean, Jung was very story motivated, and so he was really compelled by these persistent mythologies that have stayed with us across much of history. We can see the image of a Norse god over here. It's Loki. There's a reason he's here, because all these old stories Jung believed aren't just fables, tales with a moral, some nugget of wisdom to learn. They're describing something fundamental about the human experience that can tell us more about how we understand ourselves at a subconscious level. We're not able to fully be cognizant of the concepts we're kicking around, possibly because it's just too ill-defined, but we're aware of them. And so we're telling these stories to explore these ideas while we're not able to properly articulate the concepts. And that's a fascinating take too. So, although the article says, although the number of archetypes is limitless, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. There's an infinitude of genders, that sort of thing. It's a spectrum. Whatever. There are a few particularly notable recurring archetypal images. The chief among them, according to Jung, being the shadow, the wise old man, the child, the mother, and her counterpart, the maiden, and of course, the anima or animus. So this is one of the ways in which Jung got moved towards the woo-woo shelf, right? Because he's positing these conceptions of how we can understand the interactions and roles of how humans behave and how we understand ourselves. He's trying to create these models for understanding and for articulating the ideas we're working with. But people are seeing him basically whipping out a deck of tarot cards and going, everyone is one of these cards, it feels like it's astrology related, even though it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it's like the Woo Express there.
Yeah. So in this case, a lot of these are somewhat intuitive, like the shadow, the darker self, analytical psychology. The shadow is an unconscious aspect of personality. Get back here. That does not correspond with the ego ideal, leading the ego to resist and project the shadow, creating conflict with it. So in this understanding of things, I don't want to say model so much, because this is an interpretation of a model, but whatever. It's the ego creates its own enemy in order to create conflict, and that creates dysfunction, right? So when we're treating a person with something like that, we have to focus on why they are fighting themselves. And we still see this reflected in a lot of modern psychology. There's still this idea of inner conflict, even though most inner conflicts are actually about a priority conflict. Like, do I obey the law, or do I save Anne Frank from the Nazis? You've got two different priorities programmed into you by society: protect life, obey law, and now they're in conflict. What do? You've got to sort out which value is the higher priority, but until you do, you're going to be in a state of internal conflict. It's not necessarily, in fact, it rarely actually is an internal projection creating dysfunction. The wise old man. Now, that's not to say there is no such thing as the shadow. I mean, again, model all of this. There is no such thing in a physical, real sense. It's just mechanisms for understanding how we think about how we think. But there is something to that. There is a self-destructive streak that manifests sometimes for various reasons. And it necessarily, under Freud's model, has to come from the ego. So we've also got the wise old man, or woman, as the case may be, and they represent the collective unconsciousness, right? It's not your older, wiser self speaking to you from the future. It's the wisdom of the crowd, but internalized. It's your downloaded version of the zeitgeist. It's the bits of publicly available information you have that guides you and tells you what you should do. In many older cultures, this would be referred to as like your inner ancestor. You know, it's the voice of those who came before trying to guide you, but they don't always get it right because it's not all of them. It's just your own voice and your own understanding of things, which is far from complete necessarily. But that's where we get the archetype. The child, in Jung's view, is, well, I'll just read the thing. First suggested by Carl Jung. In more recent years, author Carolyn Myss, who I'm not familiar with, I have to say, has suggested that the child, out of the 4 survival archetypes, is present in all humans. According to Myss, its presence ranges from childish to childlike longing for the innocent. Okay, so this is later reworking of what the thing might mean rather than talking about what Jung posed it does mean. But ELDR, it's things that we associate with childishness. It's wonder, it's delight, it's curiosity, it's fear of the unknown sometimes, it's excitement about the unknown sometimes. It's so many things. And then we've also got the mother, the nurturer, right? And Jung, because he was influenced by Freud, where everything is based on your relationship to your mother specifically, there's a very heavy feminine influence in his model too, right? Like everyone has a spirit of the mother, right? The nurturing self, which is distinct from the father, which in archetypical terms might be described as the protector self or the protector of others self specifically. But of course, that isn't necessarily how everyone conceptualizes their own father. C'est la vie. But Jung didn't even include it in his initial model. And of course, the maiden is like the mother, but virginal. It's a social construct. It's kind of like partway between maternal and child, right? There's childlike elements, but also, while Jung tried to get more symbolic about it, we were still so close to Freud that it was impossible to shake this preoccupation with sex, that all human motives are ultimately rooted in a drive for sex. And we know that's not true, but we just couldn't get that. Remember, it was a bunch of all the old psychologists, Freud and Jung and whatnot. They were men. They were privileged men. They were bored privileged men. There was a very strong sex motivation in the way they thought about things. And they assumed everyone else did the same, because clearly the person coming up with the model must be the personification of typical well-adjusted normalcy. No one else could have, if your experience differs from theirs, you're a deviant. Unless you actually are deviant, in which case you're perfect. Oh my goodness. And then of course we've got the anima or the animus. So watch out for animosity, I suppose. Basically, that's just it's the yin and the yang. It's the opposed balanced forces, but it's proposed as being masculine and feminine in nature, and it's a whole thing. But TLDR, it's your soul, who you are as a person, is at the most fundamental level determined by whether you've got more anima or more animus, whether you're more masculine or more feminine, and that determines everything about you, what your desires are, because we know from award-winning essays written in recent months that women have womanly desires put there by God, and men have manly desires. Anyway, there's this idea that everything you do, your sexuality, the choices you make, because all the choices you make are in service to getting laid, and all of this stuff, it's driven by effectively your gender identity. In other words, it's what flavor of archetype is your soul, and everything else forms on top of that. And it's a whole thing. So
But what if I just want garlic bread?
Right. Well, if you want garlic bread, we can help with that. We have an emoji for it now at your suggestion. So yeah, that reminds me. I was going to talk about a thing that happened last night. It was on the show The Humanity Live with Tommy and Matt that I talk about from time to time. Let me see if I can find the clip of them from a few weeks ago. I probably still have it saved, but like I said, it's from a few weeks ago. So hold, please. I can't remember exactly what the hell it was I wanted to bring up, though, because it's been a minute. Last night was a busy night. There was a lot going on.
Oh, yes, there was. Very much so.
I did find the clip, though, so I will play that real quick.
And so also, Ember, I'm putting yours up without reading them as well. But don't tell the chat you're putting comments up without reading them. Shit. You'll end up showing something like Matt's butt. It's like, well, I mean,
it's so descriptive.
You can't prove it doesn't.
It's true.
So
you can't. We're not made it this quick.
That's awesome.
Tommy and Matt, folks, every Wednesday, except when they're on vacation for holidays, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Fair warning, they do very long shows, but it's partly my fault. Not just my fault. They're easily derailed by the chat, which is really fun. Not that I know anything about that.
No, you know nothing about tangents. Nothing at all.
No, we don't do tangents here. It's not like we made a fucking t-shirt about it or anything. Oh goodness. All right, but I'm a silly bean. We need to pick the pace the fuck up. Oh, but Lil has one. Look at that. Da-da-da! Because oh shit, what have I done? Okay, that's slightly better. I'll just have to add the thing back to I'm always messing up my scenes. It's a superpower, it's a skill, it's what I do. So yeah, I think we're gonna take ourselves a little break here. To literally be a break, because I will just go on and on and on about Jung, but I really want to get to another model for specific reasons. And so, yeah, we'll take a quick break and explore what happens when people don't get fucking therapy. Enjoy.
I have a problem with this stuff being normalized across the spectrum. And specifically, like, why push this on kids? Why introduce this to kids?
I am a depraved wretch. I am a great sinner. I'm a worm, completely undeserving of any love or any grace. I'm nothing. I'm nothing.
You're incapable of being a good person. You're an evil person. You're a terrible person. At the core fabric of who you are. That's why we need laws. We need laws because we're bad people. All of us are bad people.
You can't spell Pride Month without demon. PRIDEMONTH.
If we don't know who the women are, because they are just people, then we won't be able to pull the women up to equality with men.
We have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for two reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of those people is basically, a huge problem to a sane world.
Transgenderism must be eradicated.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people.
I will use whatever gives me victory. I don't care about the truth, and I don't care about the law. I care about one thing, the control.
But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president. Then what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
It was actually a tremendous blessing to these children for them to be killed and go to heaven and be with God.
We've been hoodwinked. We've been taken in by an ideology crafted by creeps and then pushed on children.
Stop letting people pressure you into thinking.
If they die, they die.
I want to be ignorant, honestly.
Being a Christian doesn't exclude us from experiencing spiritual dryness.
We're bad people. All of us are bad people.
It was only as I clicked the button for that break that I realized it really is true. None of those people has ever been to therapy. Okay, probably not ever, but is in desperate need of therapy.
Yes,
One of them I know for a fact has been using ChatGPT as a therapist.
Yes.
ChatGPT is not a therapist.
Mm-hmm. There's been multiple news stories about ChatGPT convincing people to do horrible, horrible things. It's not a therapist. Oh my.
Yeah. In fact, I was going to use this as a bonus topic to kind of normally we try to end at 90 minutes, partly for rewatchability and partly because everybody seems to take off around the 90-minute mark, and I still don't know why. If you know why, if there's a show that comes on that y'all take off to watch, please let me know, because if there's something cool to watch, I want to watch it too. But I digress. Today I was planning on going a little bit long because the next show, Politicality, that Lil will be on, starts at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Normally we end at 12:30 Eastern time. So rather than leave y'all with a half-hour gap, I thought we'd narrow that down a little bit. I know Lil's going to need some time between shows to freshen up or whatever the case may be, but I thought I'd narrow the gap a little bit.
Eat some garlic bread.
For real.
I know. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, holy crap, I've got to get something to eat and freshen up and all that stuff and then get back and be ready to go in 30 minutes. How am I going to do this?
Oh, girl, remind me to tell you the story of my 12-hour stream sometime.
Oh my God. Please do.
It was I was a much younger girl back then. It was and also I had much more recently been an over-the-road truck driver, so holding it for 11, 12 hours wasn't really that big a deal. But that's the main thing when you're doing long shows or back-to-back shows is quick food, quick bathroom, take care of whatever else you need, and get back on camera on time. But holy shit, a 12-hour show, it just doesn't stop. If you ever try to do something similar, don't be an idiot like past Ember. Make long commercials you can play as breaks. or just play some of your own shorts or something, like a 3-minute video or something, so you have enough time to run to the bathroom, for instance. Have snacks ready, be prepared for your long stream, so you can eat them during your break instead of having to go start cooking something, you know? Stuff like that. Better yet, have co-hosts, so you can just pop off screen for a second and make the co-host.
Yeah, make me do it. And just to let you know, I am actually working on a commercial, and it is going to be Kip attacks of my dog Kip attacking me while I'm on camera. So that should be fun.
Hell yeah.
I was actually prepared that time. Yay! Every time you've done that to me, it caught me so off guard. I was like, okay. I was actually prepared. I'm proud of myself.
I mean, yeah, actually, that was really good. From time to time, we all get, you know, our other penalty. That's a thing to be prepared for, because it's been known to happen to Joe from time to time, and so yeah, you got to have, like, you got to be quick on your feet. You got to be quick to adapt, because it is live broadcasting. We're just going out. There's no editing later. I mean, well, you can edit it later, but it won't be alive anymore. Anyway, I used to just start plugging things. Like it happened to Mark Reed a couple of times, for example, because we do the debate reviews every weekend. Half the time we're at his place, half the time we're over here. So make sure you're subscribed and join us for the debate reviews. But I digress. And his signal would just go out, right? It hasn't happened in a while, but it's been known to happen. And when that happened to me the first time, I just put up this pirate flag clip art that I had, and I went, Avasti lovers, we're taking over the channel. And then I just started plugging Mark's stuff. I was like, so, you know, join and get all these cool emojis and yada yada. And that's kind of my default. My favorite, I think, was I was on Skeptic Haven a couple of years ago, and I think, I can't remember if there was a panel or if it was just me and one other host, but whatever the case may be, maybe it was the call-in show they do, and the other host got, whatever the case. As the co-host, you don't have control of the buttons. I mean, hell, the host only has a couple of buttons. The producers have to push most of the buttons. So when the host drops out and the co-host is just there, you can't do anything except talk. So I just on the fly started talking about Skeptic Haven's Patreon to try to become a 501c3. And this is how I developed a reputation for promoting the community randomly. It's not random. It's when it's situation specific, you know? It just seems random.
Yeah,
oh, good.
It works.
All right, Whitney, thank you for dropping by. It's lovely to see you in, like, a chat that isn't full of red hat people. You can catch Winnie in Jovan streams often, but there are lots of red hat people. It's generally safe to be at. The mods are on point, but the point is to lure in the red hat people so that they will call Jovan and the debates happen. So yeah. Anyhow, I am so far off topic. What else is new?
Tangents.
That's why we have an emoji. That's why we have a shirt. I mean, well, the
And a
shirt is
hoodie.
based on the emoji, you know. Yes, Adrian, red hat is my code word for broad umbrella of bigots. Like, they don't necessarily have to feel like, for example, there are red hats who are against the genocide in Palestine, you know? It doesn't necessarily mean that they hate a specific group of people, just that they broadly support social policies that lead to the maximum harm of everyone, especially vulnerable groups. So yeah, red hats. Oh my goodness. I do actually, in fact, have a red hat. Can I reach it? Well, I mean, this wasn't what I was going for, but this is a red hat. And I have one. But
I
that's
don't
not
think
what
that
we
one
mean.
counts. So, I mean, we're talking about a specific type of red hat.
Yeah, and as Adrian points out, they really are bigots. Because if a person is bigoted against anybody, they're usually bigoted against everybody. You know, like as the saying goes, scratch a transphobe and you find a racist underneath. You know, it's just the Venn diagram is a circle.
Yeah, it really is, and it amazes me at how many of those people will sit there and be like, "Well, yeah, I'm a homophobe, but I'm not a racist." No, you are. I've heard you say stuff. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, in that supercut we just played, you could hear Helen Joyce, even though she was ostensibly talking about trans people, using eugenics language. You know, she's talking about purifying the world. Holy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we try to avoid that kind of nonsense. Anyhow, as always, I digress. I know I've said that twice, but we actually are getting to the point, I promise. Okay, so our next thing, there are many other psychological models of how the mind works and different ways of viewing it with different divisions. But the one I wanted to get to today, because we need this piece for understanding DID tomorrow or whenever the fuck we do it, is the internal family system model. Now, there's a couple of notes from the community, from the academics on the internal family system model. The person who developed it got a little bit carried away in woo-woo and eventually left academia to develop the model in a non-clinical sense. And so it's a way of understanding things, but there are elements of it that are very much not in keeping with best practices for psychological techniques or psychotherapy. There are huge parts of it that are completely exempt from all data collection and understanding how things apply to individuals. There's wild ideations that go off into people just making shit up land. There's difficulties with this system. And because of those difficulties, parts of it are very popular in pop pseudopsychology, like TikTok psychology, for example. If you've ever been on one of those pages where they're narcissist this and narcissist that, that's pop pseudopsychology stuff. Usually there are a couple of legit therapists on TikTok trying to push back against the made up bullshit, but there's so much made up bullshit. Most of it comes from ChatGPT, FYI. I digress. Anyway, internal family system model. There's stuff here, but there's also bullshit here. And so we have to be careful. We don't just accept a concept because it sounds like it resonates with something, you know? We have to be careful because there is known pseudoscience riddling this whole model. Okay, so what is IFS, the internal family system? It is a progressive form of therapy, says the article on the internal family systems website. But it is used for therapy because it's used for understanding oneself, and that can be useful in healing, even if it's not analytically valid, you know? So it offers a dynamic and layered approach to understanding and healing the psyche, developed by Richard Schwartz in the 1980s. And again, he was a legit psychotherapist, but he drifted off into woo-woo, and like all other woo-woo people, cut ties with the actual science to continue to pursue his woo-woo, because I'm right, everyone else is an idiot, and there's a conspiracy to silence me. That's how it always begins, doesn't it? So the IFS model integrates systems thinking with the notion that an individual's mind is made up of multiple subpersonalities. Now, there are other models that do this, but internal family system is the most useful for the ideas we want to explore, which is why we're here. But I have to put that caveat. I have to stress it's tainted with a fuck ton of pseudoscience. So each subpersonality has its own distinct attributes and functions. And again, model, not how things actually work, a model for understanding so we can deal with the concepts and articulate our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I know why Maya doesn't talk about psychology very much, because the fact that I have to keep stressing this is a little frustrating. But there's this tendency in psychology to do what we do with all the rest of the sciences. When we say like the globe earth model, people just click and go, the earth is globe, you know?
Yeah.
Or when we say the Big Bang model, people just click and go, the universe is expanding. So there's this conflation between the model and the reality. And in psychology, there isn't that one-to-one connection. It isn't a reification situation where the model is describing the thing directly, where the map is like the place. It's metaphor, it's conjecture, it's conceptualization, it's artistic reinterpretation for the point and purpose of articulation, not necessarily because it's true.
Yeah. What
So,
what
yeah.
is it? It's the quote, it's all models are wrong, some are useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true in every science, but it's especially true. I suppose a good way to phrase it might be because when we look at psychology, we're looking at the mind, the function of the mind. There is a physical component from the neurology. There's a physical component from the chemical interactions that can affect mood and thinking and behavior and so forth. But there's something emergent about it we don't fully understand, which is why the discipline exists. And while we have advanced quite a bit beyond the epic poetry of the 16th century, it's still more of a literature than a literal kind of thing. You know, it's poetic in nature, at least partially. We're trying to formalize and physicalize it, but we're thinking about things that we don't have concretes to think about around. And so these models are proposing hypothetical concretes we can build the abstracts around, with the understanding the concretes do not exist. But that has to be stressed because people have this instinctive tendency to assume that the concrete, the abstract concrete, as it were, is itself an actual thing when it's not, and it's known to be not. It makes it very difficult to talk about. Oh, anyhow, what are the core concepts and what is the internal family system model? Okay, core concepts. At the heart of the internal family system model are several core concepts. I should just do this for my reading voice. It just should be my reading voice, so people know when I'm reading off something, you know? I'm so silly. I know. I can't help it.
I love it though.
It kind of is my ego. It's how my instinctive desires negotiate with my understanding of societal expectations, and silliness emerges. Anyhow, this is another educational technique. When you take something that's really happening in real time and relate it to one of the concepts you described earlier, it not only recalls the information, but it creates a new connection in the person's understanding. So now we're talking about education, but that's a helpful hint if you ever want to try to like do what I'm doing, but better, hopefully. Anyway, at the heart of the internal family system model are several core concepts that articulate the nature and function of the psyche's inner parts. The model recognizes that the mind contains myriad parts, often operating in harmony, but sometimes in conflict. Holy shit, this sounds like it was written by ChatGPT. I don't know, just the sentence structure. It sounds like something you might hear on the Apostate Sisters. And you're just like, that fell out of a ChatGPT completely uninvestigated at all. You know? It's wild. Lil sends us a super chat, Lil of all trades, who also has her own channel. She's not just on other people's channels like here and PKA. She does her own thing. But she said this $5. Thank you, Lil. And says Silly Ember is the best Ember. Well, one of the best. And also like and share. which is good advice for everyone, is please do share, because we have a goal this year. It's a huge goal. It's a difficult goal. It's going to be a hard goal to reach. I want to get to 10K. And I want to get to 10K for a specific reason. Like, I mean, I don't want like more viewers just for the sake of more viewers. Although it would be nice if more people wanted to be here. It'd be great to have a more community of people who want to be here doing what we do, who love learning and engaging with other people who don't want other people dead because of the kind of people they are. For instance, it's kind of a shame we don't have a bigger community for that purpose. I want to get to 10K because that is the level where YouTube hides the next button I want. You may, if you've been here for a long time, you may recall how my primary motivation to reach 1K was to get access to the YouTube button that allows redirects. And that is one of my favorite tools on YouTube. That's why I'm using it today to redirect to politicality. I fucking love using that button. Now I want another button. It's the ability to do fundraisers directly on YouTube. Because we do have a couple of fundraisers. We've got the Protect Joy shirt. 1 second. I have to get to the right window. This shirt. Proceeds from this shirt go to the Trevor Project. Nothing for me. That's for the Trevor Project. Similarly, we have another object with a fundraiser, but it doesn't have its own thing. It doesn't have its own overlay, because it has its own ad, and I will play that for you in a moment. But doing fundraisers that long way around by putting items out for sale and saying, hey, buy this thing, and the proceeds from it will go to support this organization, that's fine and dandy at this level, but I want to be able to do it directly. I want to be able to hold a proper fundraiser, and that button isn't available until you hit 10K. And so I want to get to 10K. And it's a long fucking way away. So please, please, please use the share button early, often, liberally. Send this stuff everywhere, because I realize I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I mean, half the people won't even view my content because they see this flag in the picture. And then half of those that remain won't view my content because they don't like me. You know, it's just, I realize it's going to take a lot to get there, but I very much believe it can be done. So please, please, please use the share button. You use the button you have so I can get the button that we need to do the good I know we can do in the best way possible. Now, I promised you the ad for the other object, and I will play that real quick. It is 1 minute. So hold, please. Hey, want to do something good? Recently, a person who had sent me this version of my logo, unsolicited, made public statements promoting violence against minority women and survivors of abuse. Now that person's gift will do some good instead. 100% of the proceeds from sales of this survivor's mug will go to fund the nonprofit organization RAIN in their efforts to provide vital resources to survivors and to build a future where fewer of us need this kind of help. Find this item at my store at betterthanember.com. And if you want to learn more about how you can be better at supporting survivors, check out this video, where I've distilled the best practices for helping survivors that I collected from speaking with actual crisis professionals at RAIN, Willow Grove, Vera House, and independent counselors. Whenever you can turn the harmful acts of others into something good, that is an epic win. Epic, of course, being a reference to the water filters that also partner with this channel. The video mentioned in that spot drops. It's available to members now because members get early access. It's one of the perks of memberships. So, you know, consider joining memberships. But it becomes public on Saturday. And the reason for the delay is because I have to give members early access. That's one of the perks they're promised, and I have to keep my promises, you know? Although I'm sure the members would understand if I dropped it early. But I do try to keep my promises whenever possible. You may have noticed. Oh, hey, Adrian, thanks, and enjoy yours as well. We'll catch you around. I've been harping about ChatGPT recently. That's because of another thing I've recently discovered in some of the mess we've been dealing with for the last month. The people spreading misinformation aren't just going off of half-baked vibes. It's much worse than that. It's ChatGPT. They're reading AI-generated hallucinations as if it were expert information. And it's misinformation. It's dangerous misinformation. It's harmful misinformation. And so the video that comes out on Saturday isn't just refuting people making shit up on their own and passing it off as expert information. They're passing along an AI hallucination that they've uncritically accepted and passing it along as if it were best practices. I'm not against AI per se. It has uses. It is a tool, but it is not a therapist. It is not an expert. When you need expert information, talk to real experts. It's not hard, I promise you. Maybe it's because of my years of experience as a journalist, but I just emailed the organizations that I wanted to talk to, and they asked people to volunteer to talk to me, and a bunch of them did. I spoke to dozens of people because I just asked them, you know?
Yeah.
Any given person may or may not want to talk to a person, but if you reach out, you're going to find experts to talk to. Just ask them. Holy shit. Anyway, tangents upon tangents today. I'm a bit worked up though, because there's another thing. I may be doing a bonus show about this at some point, because again, I'm doing call screening later. Lil's on politicality. That's a better name for the show. Lil's show is on after this one. Our friend Brentley is on after that one. Punk Apostate, that'll be at 4:20-ish. It's what it's scheduled for, but Brentley is always fashionably late. So there's a bunch of other shows, and I am call screening later today. So I don't know when I'll be doing the bonus show, but I'll probably be doing a bonus show about some of the nonsense that people have been getting up to because of AI and accepting AI and then internalizing shame about the fact they've uncritically accepted bullshit from AI and have caused a great deal of harm about it. Now they can't admit that they've done harm, and so they have to keep doubling down on it. But that's the topic for a bonus show another time. Anyway, we are trying to do a thing here. So let's do that. Okay. I mean, I said at the beginning, we do notes up front to minimize how often we go on a tangent. Not that we will not go on a tangent.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Efficacy is different. Say let me. Anyway, the parts are categorized into 3 groups: managers, firefighters, and exiles. Now, a note on this. When I was trying to look up the internal family system, I kept getting page after page after page after page that only talked about managers, firefighters, and exiles. Those are not the things. Those are the categories that the things fall into. Finding the specific things took a while because, again, this isn't an actual science. It's a pseudoscience driven by bullshit and vibes. So people don't have to know what they're talking about because half of it is just made up with no empirical verification. One thing that is empirically verifiable is Andrew has become a member. And thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. And you enjoy all the fun custom emojis and including the garlic bread. I know why Aunt Drew joined. It's for the garlic bread, but we do have a bunch of fun emojis that are.
It's always the garlic bread.
She immediately goes for the garlic bread. Alas, it doesn't actually show up as garlic bread through this software, but those of you in the live chat can see, and it's beautiful garlic bread. It's the same garlic bread as is on our garlic bread shirt. Ta-da! All of these, by the way, I should have said earlier, but it's labeled, but the chat is in the way. They're all available at the website, betterthanember.com. There's a store link. There's also a bunch of other links, which I should not talk about because Maya keeps telling me when you market something, focus on the thing you're talking about and not all the other things. There's a lot of other things on that website. Have a look around. But that's how you get to the store. Okay, anyway. 3 groups of things: managers, firefighters, and exiles, each fulfilling a unique role within the individual's internal system. The parts are managed by the self. Another intuitive concept. The self is you. That's the you, which is the central guiding element characterized by its leadership qualities. Now, we're drifting into woo-woo already. The self is not characterized by its leadership qualities. You can describe a self by leadership qualities, but that's only one component of what makes a self. Again, we're relying heavily on intuition rather than definition, and that's not great. You're supposed to just know what the self is. If you ask, they cannot tell you because it's just made up bullshit. But there are useful bits in this model. I just have to keep stressing that it's bullshit. Anyway, it's not entirely bullshit. There is some academic underpinning, but the founder left academia because he wanted to expand into woo-woo. And he did. So there's some valuable stuff here. But disambiguating, separating what's good stuff and what's psychobabble bullshit can be very taxing. We're only here for the concepts. That's it. Okay, according to the IFS Institute, a totally unbiased source, the internal family system model is designed to foster an understanding and harmony among these parts, with the ultimate goal of achieving self-leadership. And what does that mean exactly? You make decisions on your own? You kind of do that already.
I know some people who should not be making decisions on their own.
I mean,
they need a reasonable adult in the room.
Look, you don't have to come for me like that, Lil. When I hit a questionable situation, I always ask Maya or the group, or I'm like, hey, this seems like a dumb idea. Is it a dumb idea? And then, Maya will tell me, that's a very dumb idea, Ember. You should absolutely not do that. Or, that's a very dumb idea, Ember. Absolutely, you should do that because it'll be hilarious for me to watch. But the rest of y'all just encourage me. You're just like, do it.
I do what I do.
Oh my goodness. My Unfinished Journey says, speaking of wrong, useful-ish models, is the self analogous to the superego? In this conceptualization, again, we don't get a definition of what the self is, but no, the self would be sort of a hybrid between the id and the ego. The self is what you want, what you need, what you truly need, not just what you desire. And your relationship between those inner desires and the outside world. So this version of self, if I were to provide a definition, would be a combination of those two. So basically everything but the superego, but only parts, because we're building shit out of parts. It's what we do. Sort of like evolution. So yeah, the ultimate goal is self-leadership. This leads to emotional healing and growth of the individual. And this is another thing we see a lot in pseudopsychology, psychobabble, pop sci circles, is everything is about healing, and occasionally growth. Nothing is about what is, and let's understand how things work, right? So this is a model insofar as it's useful for talking about concepts, but it's intended towards exploitation by life coaches. Basically, it's not for understanding, it's not for learning, it's for taking money from hurt people and pretending to help them. The fact that it occasionally sometimes does help a little is accidental. It's not, they don't care. As long as they have your money, that's the thing, is to get your money. But the ideas can still have value, even if it's being misused, right? So we've got the managers, the firefighters, and the exiles. But again, these are just categories. They're not the types. They're the categories of types, of parts, of bits and pieces. So, yes. So, manager, you get the idea. The manager maintains control and protects the individual from pain. The firefighter distracts from pain and soothes the individual when exiles are activated. When you hear a person say activated, they're referring to IFS because there is no other model I'm aware of. You'll hear people say triggered. You'll hear people say overwhelmed or overloaded or out of spell slots, whatever. There's a bunch of different ways to refer to this feeling, this phenomenon. But when they say activated, it's almost a dog whistle that they're deeply invested in this specific brand of pseudopsychology because it's the only one that uses that term in that way that I've come across. I could be mistaken. And then exiles carry the burdens of traumatic experiences. Now, this is a very, very useful concept. And again, we're here for the concepts. This is the idea that when you experience trauma, a portion of your psyche is carved off, given that trauma, and banished from the group. But occasionally they wander back. Or they get brought back by someone reminding you or bringing it up or whatever the case may be. They end up back in your conscious area where you're consciously aware of it and thinking about it. But this trauma, it isn't just a past experience. It's an active pain. We can bury our traumas, but we can't ever quite get rid of them. And when they're brought back into the center of the self or whatever, it's very much the same as when they were first produced in the first place. Because we haven't healed, and often we can't heal. The best we can do is get it the fuck out of here. So the exile is the portion of the persona whose role is to hold that burden for us. And then when they show up, that it's the firefighters' role. That's the reason they're called firefighters, is because it's this idea of burning, right? This painful, scarring nastiness. And so the firefighters are there to either distract away from the thing or soothe you when the trauma is in your face. Now, it should be noted, all of these are focused on pain and trauma. There is nothing to this conceptualization of self-actualization, of growth, of learning, of self-improvement. This is all managing pain and trauma, which is one of the reasons it's an incomplete model. It's focused specifically for exploiting, hurting people. But the concepts are useful. So let's get into what the hell the bits and parts are. Now, again, I had to search and search and search to find the parts because there's so many people. Again, pop psychology, people don't actually care enough to understand what the system is they're teaching. They just want words they can throw out to get people to throw money at them. So they talk about managers and firefighters and exiles, but they don't go any deeper because they don't have to get the money, so to speak. I'm broad brushing, I understand, but I'm very pissed off at TikTok pop psychology people because they I mean, you know, I've always been a scholarly inclined person. I want to know what's true, and when there's people running around spreading shit that they know is false, it offends me profoundly.
Same here, especially when I see like the AI, like science garbage that's been like plaguing YouTube. It just, I get offended at that. I'm just like, come on, guys.
Sapphire says everyone knows the primary role of firefighters is to distract from burning fires
and getting cats out of trees.
Never mind your house. Look over there. Is that the queen? Oh my goodness. Myron said the leadership part, the self-leadership part, points towards learning to trust yourself, your wiser self. It can be helpful to people who have had their self-esteem demolished in abusive relationships. And that's worth noting. Again, I want to stress, just because a model is based in pseudoscience doesn't mean everything it has to say is wrong or useless. We just have to be careful of the pseudoscience element because it can be misleading. But when what we're dealing with this sort of thing, like I've tried to stress throughout, is we're looking for the concepts to give us conceptual ideas we can then use to articulate the concepts. But we have to be very careful while delving in here because of that pseudoscience contamination, not to say everything in it is wrong. And my apologies if my rage about woo peddlers has given you a perspective that I'm saying this is all ridiculous, worthless nonsense. It's not. It's just potentially dangerous because it's so riddled with misinformation. So we have to be very, very careful as we delve for the ideas that we need. So, yes, I finally did find a parts list. Of course, it's from Reddit. Of course it is.
Of course.
But I mean, it's useful, and that's what we're looking for. So I'll make it bigger. Managers, inner critic. This is one of the terms that tipped me off onto the possible utility of the system. We've got various critters, various roles. Everybody understands the concept of an inner critic intuitively. We're like, yes, that's a real thing. That's why it's there. It's to trip your intuition and get you to accept that the rest of the thing is a real thing. But we actually are talking about fractional personas. There's elements of how our minds work in an integrative fashion. You know, I've often talked about having a voice in the back of my head that tells me when I'm doing something stupid. She's been drunk for a while, but she's up there. And inner critic, perfect fit for that. The perfectionist, you know, that it's again, it's a focus on what is wrong. The inner critic, the perfectionist, the people pleaser. This is where all this talk of people pleasing, it's related. It connects with this. Not all of it comes from this, but it relates, you know? Taskmaster, controller, caretaker. Caretaker, we often think of as a positive thing, but in the context of the internal family system, we're talking about damage, fear, pain, you know? So what is a caretaker in that context? That is kind of important. This is one of the things that makes this worth talking about, because it doesn't mean the same as people pleaser in that you're taking care of others. It's a manager persona that takes care of you. It's helping you function when you're burdened by a fuck ton of trauma.
Yeah.
And understanding this, it's very useful for the way we conceptualize our own thinking, because it gives us words and terms to latch onto. Like now that I've discussed this a few times with a few different people, I can articulate that there's a portion of my psyche, a persona, if you will. Yeah, I think persona is probably too strong a word, but a portion of my psyche that is really trying to take good care of me. And now that I'm aware of that concept, when I hear that little tiny voice in my head say, Ember, you should feed you. We need to feed Ember now. I need to listen to it. I need to pay attention. I need to prioritize that voice and give it a megaphone so the rest of me fucking listens, you know? So the concepts do have valid uses.
Yeah. One of those concepts that is screaming at me right now is the taskmaster, because I have 20 minutes to go get something to eat and prep for my show. So I am going to dip out a little bit early.
That's fair. I mean, I said, I'm running late on purpose. But yeah, go feed you. You have to feed Lil too.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta feed me too. So anyway, I love you guys. I love you, Ember, and I will see you guys in a little bit.
Alrighty, toodles.
Bye.
Now, once again, Lil will be on the Kentucky Atheist coming up in a few minutes. This stream will take you over there. But if the redirect doesn't work for whatever reason, the link to that next stream is pinned at the top of the chat, so you can bring yourself there if you want. And that's starting in 21 minutes, according to my clock. So we do have a little bit. So yeah, let's continue with our list. And I just to click on it, zoomies. We've got the zoomies. Oh my goodness. Pessimist, hyper vigilant part. Like some of the names are better than others, but there is that hyper vigilant side, right? We see that sometimes, and often it is a trauma response. It's that watchful part, and sometimes it comes to the fore. For example, if you're being, say, stalked by an abusive person who just wants to hurl threats and harassment in your general direction all day, every day, your hypervigilant part kind of wants to just keep on the lookout for them at the expense of getting anything else done. It's there for your survival, but it's not supposed to take over your life. You know, that's also harmful. That's also damaging. It gets in the way. Theo says, I check all the boxes. One of the criticisms of this list is the fact that they are boxes, because there's so many people who will be like, check, 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 check. Like maybe we should have used something other than boxes, because it's not an inventory. It's not a goal list. We're not supposed to be checking boxes. So yeah, it's a flaw in the design probably, but still. Avoidant part, right? Like this is a persona that's like, nope, we're not going here. We're completely avoiding the thing because it's harmful. It brings trauma back. It brings additional emotional struggle and draining energy. We do not have to spare, so we're better off avoiding. That doesn't necessarily mean unhealthy avoidance. Sometimes it's there for a reason, like to protect your limited emotional energy. But sometimes it develops into a problem. Any of these can become a problem if they get out of hand, if you're not dealing with your trauma and it starts to control you. For instance, the judgy part, the planner, I struggle with that one. That isn't so much a trauma handler as a trauma preventative. Because, you know, one of the sources of my anxiety is being unprepared. Even though I know from experience, I do just fine when I find myself in an unfamiliar situation, completely unprepared for it. I can usually come up with something engaging, educational, entertaining off the top of my head. And sometimes I actually do better that way. But I still worry about it. Partly because I'm prone to saying silly things. I don't know. In full honesty and full transparency, it's because people have given me shit about it in the past. People have used it to try to hurt me. And so there's a part of me that tries to avoid future hurts of that kind by being overprepared. So, yeah. My Unfinished Journey says, are some of the names? I'm not sure. Are they like the names of the parts? The way Jung's archetypes were also kind of the names of the things? Maybe. Possibly. I don't know. But we've got advisor, monitor, reassurer. A lot of them say what they do, but they aren't always necessarily intuitive, like with the caregiver, right? Like that isn't the same as people pleaser in that it's external, it's internal. It's a manager of yourself. But again, all of this is focused around pain and trauma. It's not the full range of the human psyche. It's just this trauma handling component. So it's a component of a component of a component broken into parts. It keeps things interesting that way. Reassurer, stoic part, image manager. That's another one that we might consider to be related to the superego in Freudian models. This understanding of what's expected of you by society. And this is the part that you might see when you're a kid, especially. You'll see something like, if I do this, what will people think of me? Right? Like one of my kids actually got paralyzed by this part for a really long time. She couldn't do anything because she couldn't break out of that, what will people think of me phase of thinking, right? Like at a certain point, you have to either give yourself credit that you'll probably be fine, or my personal favorite, no one will fucking care, and move on. or accept the fact that they won't, that they'll judge you and do what you need to do anyway because you need to do it. You know? The fixer, you can probably intuit this one too. It's the idea that you can repair any problem. And that's your hyper focus, that's your fixation, that's your fixation on fixing, I suppose. Like for example, when you screw something up, you want to apologize. That's the fixer. You can totally wipe out a potential trauma just by saying you're sorry. Why would you not do that? You know, it's only when a person has crossed a certain line that it becomes a major problem. Most shit you can just say you're sorry about. And when you know you've crossed the line, now it's a bigger issue. So it's Jason Jacoby says, I don't see INFJ-A Libra on that list. Yeah, we're that's a whole separate thing. That's what the hell is the Myers-Briggs thing? Personality types? Plus it's kind of silly sometimes, but like I say, it does have some usefulness. Oh, what have I done? What have I done? I broke it. Rule enforcer, self-sacrificing part. And again, it's important to remember that these are conceptualized around the idea of managing pain and trauma. So that what is the self-sacrificing part? What is that for? How does that manage pain and trauma? Well, if you can die a heroic death, no regrets, right? But we do see that manifest in other various ways. Like if you give of yourself in certain circumstances, then people can get this concept that you're a good person, and it can erase certain past traumas or at least blur them out or something like that. Now, firefighters, that's a different thing. Instead of managing traumas, we're distracting from traumas. We're soothing traumas. So let's look at some of those. We've got the addictive part. Addiction, of course, it's a soothing mechanism. A lot of people, the reason addiction is a disease is because people become reliant on chemicals to deal with the bullshit that they cannot deal with in any other actionable way. You know, procrastinators, we distract ourselves from the shit we need to deal with. And so it becomes habitual. It becomes a problem. Self-harm. This is another one that's kind of dangerous in this pseudoscience context, because we know self-harm is a real problem for how people deal with traumas. This is an attempt to put that concept into this conceptualization because it does have to do with traumas, right? Like that's a big part of why self-harm happens, is to get away from the pain. Ask me how I know. But we can't just hand wave it away either, right? Like all the rest of these things, the traumas we're trying to describe, the strategies for dealing with them are real. But to hand wave it away, to check a box and say that's what it is, and put it in its category and pretend the problem is solved is not fucking helpful. The explosive part, which you may have gotten to just witness a tiny fragment of. The overeater or binger. Oh, fucking hell, the eating disorders are in here too. A lot of these are very intuitive, very relational, because they describe real things. But it's important to remember, we're taking reality and trying to describe it. We're not predicting reality, right? So the fact that things that are real are on the list doesn't mean the science is valid. It means some people were able to make a few accurate observations. We're looking for these for conceptual grounding, I suppose, seeds of understanding, not because they are objectively real. And we see that with a lot of other things. Sexual part, right? Like we know some people use sex as a distraction or a soothing mechanism, but that's not actually what sex is for, right? Like that's a way to use sex. That's a thing you can do with sex, but you can also just enjoy sex for its own sake. It doesn't have to be a distraction from a trauma. Or some people only use it for reproduction. I don't get it, but some people do. But that also kind of goes to what we're talking about here. That purity culture, that social expectation, that super ego bullshit imposed on you. It can itself create a trauma, right? Like we've got that whole thing with the what will people think of me, and the approval seeker and the rule enforcer. Again, this one's internal too. That's not the person being pedantic of everyone else. You broke a rule, you broke a rule. It's that part in yourself where you cannot, that almost autistic behavior of these are the rules, I must follow them. That's to deal with or to avoid trauma. And it goes on and on and on like this. Blamer, gambler, isolationist. No one loves me, so I will self-isolate so no one can hurt me by not loving me, right? Being numb, that relates to a real phenomenon too, that has to do with depression. And I could do a whole thing just on that. It does come up in the video on how to help actual survivors that drops on Saturday. So stay tuned for that. But we're running out of time. So I need to get to exiles to explain what's going on over here. You get the idea. The firefighters are the distractions and the soothers. Personified. That's a good way to think of it. They're personifications of processes our minds could be carrying out. So exiles, the abandoned, the feeling of abandonment. Hand it to a fraction of psyche, out of here. You're in exile, right? So you can continue with your life. We're dealing with some of that right now within some of our community, because there's a group of people running around harassing and abusing people who claim to be standing up for women while they're the ones running around harassing and abusing people, but they used to be one of the parts of our community. And so while we understand they have made themselves an unsafe place, there's that abandonment thing, right? There's people that we used to feel close to, we used to care about, who betrayed us in a very violent fashion. And we're feeling that loss, even though it's nothing we did wrong. You don't deserve to be abused, no matter what mistakes you may have made. But you still feel that loss of connection. And there's still that part of you that wonders if maybe you did deserve it. We'll address that a little bit more in the video on Saturday too, but suffice it to say, for now, you don't. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody deserves abuse of any kind, whether it's stalking or cyberbullying or physical attacks or whatever the case may be. You do not deserve that. I know it's a tough pill for some of you to swallow. It's a tough pill for me to swallow sometimes. Don't let those kinds of feelings get the upper hand. The shamed part, the fearful part, the lonely part, there's a lot of parts, because we talk about these fragments of the psyche as parts, and some of them still have part in their name. Grief-stricken, the part of you that feels that tremendous loss of connection from a dear friend, whether they died or maybe they moved away, or the end of a relationship. You break up with your partner, even if you end on good terms, like it's a financial thing, or you're just growing in different directions, or whatever the case may be, it's still normal to feel grief about that lost connection, because that's what we feel, is the emotion going out, but nothing coming back because the connection is severed. The cable, metaphorically speaking, is broken. So it's normal to feel grief. Everyone does. But do we face it? Do we heal through it? Do we exile it? There's no shame. No shame from me. We all process in our own time and in our own way. Sometimes we have to exile it because it's too strong. We can't tackle that right now, or we don't have the energy to tackle that right now, or we don't have the time to tackle that right now. This is a thing that you have to learn in the military, for instance. When you're in a combat situation, people you are good, close friends with may die right in front of you. You can't even react until after the battle is done. You have to set it aside. You have to create an exile, hand it to them, and get them the fuck out of your mind so you can focus on the battle. Otherwise, you'll join him. Now, there are less traumatic ways you might relate to that concept, but by putting it in that way, I hope it's clear that sometimes people have to do that for legitimate reasons, for their own safety, for their own health. And if you have to do that, if you have to take any part of your trauma that you're not able to deal with right now, whether you're guilty or vulnerable or feeling rejected or feeling overwhelmed or just plain being abused, whatever the case may be, there are valid uses for this. To take that trauma and send it the fuck off. It's not a permanent solution. That's not how we heal. That's how we repress. And again, all of this is only dealing with trauma and healing. But it's so important to understand there's no shame in doing that. There's no shame. There's nothing wrong with sending that part that you can't deal with right now the fuck out of here so you can survive. You have to live to fight another day if you're ever going to deal with any of this and ultimately have a fuller, better life. Now, again, like I said, we were dealing with this stuff. I did stress. I tried to stress that a lot of this is woo-woo flavored, but the concepts can still have value. I hope you learned some cool shit today. I hope it changes the way you understand yourself and how you think. I hope it builds bridges to further understanding in the future. Most of all, I hope you're okay with you, because sometimes we all have trouble with that one. All right, Lil's show, our friend Joe, both wonderful people. They're going to be starting in a few minutes. I'm going to end here to give you all a little bit of a break in between in case you have to refill your coffee or go to the restroom or whatever the case may be. But I hope you follow the whether the link or the forward, whatever, because it's Lil's first show, and I'd really like it if we could make it a good one for her. Thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate it as always. I could wax eloquent. I could go on and on as always, but yeah, it's time to go for today. As always, remember, you don't have to pretend whatever the fuck ChatGPT spits out as gospel truth, because you're better than hateful cults and dumbass motherfuckers. Toodles! Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for December. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jessica the Transmetal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Maya Adkison, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen, The Mighty Filbert, Secular Feelinist, and Geo Sam. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember, or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.
Just like a spark that's breaking out, can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt.